What do you do when your team's most talented players are the ones that are struggling with confidence, composure, and communication? That's the exact situation that Amy was in, head volleyball coach at a local high school, when she was faced with the off-season task of how do I develop the mental strength of the leaders on my team who seem to be impacting my team the most. They were crumbling under pressure and it was taking the whole team down with them. Well, in this conversation, Amy shares what finally turned things around, specifically how implementing our program, the plug and play elite mental game for teams, gave her leaders the tools that they need to show up with confidence, with mental strength, and also bring the rest of the team with them. So we also talk about the emotional weight that us as coaches carry through all of this and having the resources to support our team in this way, and what happens when your culture starts to crack a little bit, and how mental training really doesn't just help the top players, it helps transform your entire program. I know you're going to walk away with a lot of tangible nuggets from this conversation with Amy, especially if you are considering implementing mental training, because you know it's going to make the difference on your team when it matters most. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Amy as much as I enjoyed talking with her. All right, welcome Amy to the Coach Her Game podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am looking forward to our conversation because Amy actually has been on a panel. She's been using our program, the Plug and Play Elite Mental Game for Teams, and we get to dive into just all the things, how she's doing mental training with her team, how she's using Plug and Play, our program. So let's start with the basics. Amy, what do you coach? What level? Give us all of those details.
All right. Well, I'm a high school volleyball coach, and I've been head volleyball coach for 17 years, and I'm in Texas, and so I coach high school girls. I've also coached club ages 13 to 18, but my lifeline has been high school kiddos.
Yes. Have you been at the same high school that whole time?
Nope. This is my second high school to be at. So I was at another school, and then in 2017, I switched over to a different high school. So it's been an adventure.
Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of coaches can relate with that. I'm on my second high school as well. So, okay. Well, let's get into kind of the mental side of things. So being a coach for a long time, and a lot of coaches that are listening are in this situation too, where you can coach the physical skills, you got all the game plans, practice planning, all of that. But at some point, because you're using our system, you recognize that there was a part of the game that you also needed to be coaching, the mental game. So talk to me about, kind of take me back to before you started any sort of plug and play. What were you noticing in your team? What were you looking for as a coach?
Well, I think what I noticed was they had a hard time bouncing back from mistakes. They would shut down when they would make a mistake in the middle of a game. I noticed at practice it was a gamble on their attitude that I would get if based on what happened during the day. So their energy level, their focus, and I noticed that overall I knew the mental game was important, and I knew that they were emotional, having a hard time managing their emotions when it came to practice or when it came to making mistakes on the court. And I knew how to have a talk with them, but I felt like I needed more. I knew there was another aspect to the game that I could be doing better. And so I would research, and I did do a little bit of visualization, but it was me kind of just reaching for anything that I found on the internet. I made them get a journal, and I had a feelings chart in the journal at one point. I mean, I'm just reaching, trying to do anything because I can kind of see where the issue is, and it's emotional
Mhm.
intelligence and it's confidence. But I remember talking to one of my players' moms who was a counselor, and I called her on the phone. I'm like, I can see all these issues, and I don't know what to do. And so you're another lifeline I'm reaching out to. Like, how can I help them grow in their emotional intelligence and in their confidence? So I saw probably all of the issues that coaches are seeing: girls shutting down, not, beating themselves up, or the negative self talk. Um, I just didn't know how to address it, and so
Mhm.
that is what I saw throughout my years coaching, and I
Yeah.
used different tools to address it. But EMG was your package was the complete, like just kind of breath of fresh air. Finally, something that speaking my language is everything I need, and now I can equip them with a tool instead of me wondering, I hope this is right, just trying to press all the right buttons based on, the 20 different tools that I was, you know, reaching for.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like you're noticing, we say like when I start to work with coaches, there's different levels of awareness of what's going on with their team. There's like the unaware coach who, knows not a whole lot about like what's driving the success or lack of on their team. They're just kind of like going through, and honestly, I would say like a lot of first year, second year, third year coaches, like looking back to where I was when I first started coaching, it's like you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and whatever happens, happens.
Mhm.
And then there's the problem aware where you're like, I'm starting to notice that, I mean, for me, it was like we would lose games that we quote unquote shouldn't have, or like in these pressure situations, we wouldn't be able to show up, or we would lose in like a reverse sweep style where like, oh my gosh, we were like 2 points away from winning the whole match. How do we just lose the whole match? Just like that, like, so now that we're like, I'm noticing that there's a problem, that's a good step. And then you go a little bit deeper, maybe you're a little more aware of the solution. So you were kind of getting to the point as a coach that you were starting to recognize that, yeah, there's a problem. And the solution has to do with something around their emotional intelligence, their capability to, handle the pressures of the sport, all of that. So you're getting to it. And then you finally were aware of, the product that we had to actually make it easy for you for the solution. So, okay. So I have a clear picture of kind of what was going on. You stumbled across our work, plug and play. Can you just take us through the timeline of like, how did you present this to your team? So you jumped in, you're like, this is what I'm looking for. I guess actually one step before that, you mentioned it, but I want you to go a little bit deeper. How did this kind of, in your mind, solve what you were looking for? Like what about it were you like, yeah, this is the path that we're going down?
Well, I think once I read on your website all of the content that it included, it was all the bits and pieces that over time I had been toying with and trying to reiterate to the team. And so having all in one place where they can hear it from someone else too, just a
Yeah.
fresh voice. We know how important that is. Um, was something I was grateful for. And I felt like the visuals too, I could just be a talking head at times, but when they sit and watch a video and then some of the slides that you had where they can see the iceberg, and see visuals of what you're talking about, I felt like was impactful. And then when they can put a pen to paper and they can write down their feelings. I mean, that was something I had kind of toyed on. I had a journal, but I didn't really know how to use a journal, and so now I printed out your handbook. And so they had a worksheet and then they had time you would ask a pointed questions that was personal to them. And they had to write what their goals were and how they see themselves playing, or a highlight reel, And so it was just everything that I had, like I said, been reaching out was in one place. And I sold it to him. Well, I found your information after a very trying season.
Mm-hmm.
My three best players were my three biggest challenges when it came to emotional intelligence. One of the players would come to practice and I never knew where she was going to be emotionally because she was a high achiever. She struggled with perfectionism. And so we have an athletic period. So they're going to school all day and then I get them the last hour of their day. And so she would come in with all this baggage, from maybe not getting the grades that she wanted because she's such a high achiever. And so depending on how her day went was how our practice was going to go. And because she was one of our stud players, she had a lot of influence. And I can think of another player in that same group, and she had a struggle verbalizing her emotions. So based on whatever was going on, she would just start crying in practice. And then I'd have to go tend to her and she couldn't tell me what was going on. And so that
Mm-hmm.
was a struggle. And then my other third player, who was another starter, would make a mistake. Or if things weren't going well on her side of the court, she would shut down and get very quiet. And I didn't know if she was mad at another, I'm here, I am making up my own narrative. And I've had so many talks. They're like, when you don't communicate, your teammates and I are left to make up our own narrative. You're mad at the setter, or, but really she's beating herself up because come to find out doing your program, she struggles with perfectionism. So those were three girls in one team and they were all juniors. I'm about to go into my senior year with them and I needed help. So in off season, our whole focus that off season was, I just kept saying, get a grip. I need to equip these girls to get a grip. because I can't go with my top 3 starting, players, not being able to help them, and my efforts, seemed futile at this point. So that is when I found your podcast, and I listened to your podcast, and I just thought, "Oh, she is just, like, so right on, so spot on. Every single thing you were saying was resonating with me." So I got online and looked you up, looked up your website, found your information, and thought I hit the gold mine, like, "This is what I need." Immediately jumped on an email with you and said, "How can I do this for my team? My whole team needs this, not just one athlete." So at the time, I
Mhm.
didn't know if you could do it with a team.
Right. Oh yeah,
And
that's right.
it was just, I said, "I want to do this with my whole program, all my
Mhm.
60 players in my whole program from top to bottom. Our whole
Mhm.
off season, this is our focus." And so I get to see my girls every day. So I bought your program. I printed out
Mhm.
every single handbook and they had a booklet. And then on Wednesdays throughout off season from January to May, I knew everyone would be present on Wednesdays because they wouldn't travel. Mondays they travel often on Wednesdays and Fridays, and that was our main objective, was learning the skills so that they can be confident and manage their emotions and play their best. And I emailed
Mhm.
all their parents and I sent them what we were doing. I sent them your program. I sent them your podcast. They were on board. And I just told the girls, this is what we're focusing on. And I sold it to them because United States volleyball program. I went over like the 5 pillars of the United States, like the best players in our nation. One of them
Mhm.
is the mind. So not only are they training skill, not only are they training body, they're training their mind, and we have got to train our mind if we want to be elite, if we want to be a cut above the rest. This is going to be our secret sauce, and no one else is doing this. And so that's how I sold it to them. I think I showed them a video I believe you provided of
Mhm.
a national Olympian, maybe, um, and her talking about visualization and what they do for mental training. And so that's how I saw it. That's a long answer.
No, that's great because that's exactly what coaches are also a couple of things that they're thinking in the back of their mind is like, how do I present this to my team? And what the great thing about plug and play, like it's literally plug and play. Like we take care a lot of the buy-in on like what this is if you literally just like play the videos and I give it an overview of what mental training is. But also, a lot of coaches are like, this is uncomfortable for me because I am not a sports psychologist. I don't know how to teach this stuff, which that's okay. You don't need to be. That's why we have a program for you. You don't have to wear all the hats. And I love what you said about, hearing somebody else's voice because same for me. Like I am the performance coach, putting them through workouts.
Mhm.
I'm I'm their actual coach. I'm their mental training coach. It's like, can somebody else like reinforce my message or like they're getting sick of my voice. So it's also another perspective. So you don't have to take care of everything because as coaches, we already do that. So you introduced it to him, you started it. Before I get into kind of what you started to notice, you did it in a unique way, which is really great, but you focused your off season on it. And you also are in a really cool spot where you get to see your girls in the off season regularly in a like kind of a mandated situation. So like I'm seeing my girls, but it's like they don't have to come, so I don't get full participation. So it's pretty great that you were able to really focus on this and lay the foundation. But did your girls buy into it right away, or did you have some that were like, nah, not as much?
You know, and 99% of them bought in. The one player, I noticed she wouldn't watch the video,
Hmm.
and it was the one I wanted to be watching the video. So I think it was a little spiting me, possibly.
Yeah, we've
And
all been
and I
there.
had to make myself not stare at her the whole time, like, "I'm doing this for you," you know?
Yeah.
But she wouldn't watch the video, but she would take notes and she would listen, and if I had said, "Hey, are you paying attention?" She was like, "No, I learn better when I just listen." And so I had to make myself not focus on her, and I had to make myself not care about how she's getting the information because I think she should be looking at it. But
Right.
the fact was she was there, she was taking notes, but the overall, all of them, I would look around during visualization and then they would all come up and, we would talk about it in dialogue. The great thing about doing it in a big group is we could have group discussions after. What
Yeah.
was your one takeaway, and have follow-up questions. And
Mhm.
and we did some table talking too, which was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That is so funny. It's so easy for us to, because I do the same thing. I'm like, that girl's not closing her eyes in her visualization. And like, but then I look around and I'm like, okay, well, there's like 35 other girls who are in it and doing it. And okay, we just have to like readjust what we're focusing on. But yeah, so good. And I'm doing it with my team in the off season too right now. And it's been enlightening. I kind of had very low expectations, to be honest. I was like, are they really going to do this in the off season? It's less structured. We're not in season in the grind, but it's been so good. Like they're having great conversations. That's what I love about doing it in a group setting, is that the girls also get this opportunity to bond with each other and share and be vulnerable. And the stuff that they're sharing, I'm like, they're doing it. This is really cool, to be able to head into season with some of this foundation already laid. So did you also do it in season? So you did it in the off season. Season starts. Did you also do any of the components in season?
We did. We did 3-2-1 Brave in season. And we would do that before practice
Mm-hmm.
and we would do that before games. And it was so helpful. It was a part of our pregame routine
Yeah.
that I gave the 3-2-1 Brave handout to, and they still had their notebooks from off season, and they would use their notebook, and the captains would have the 3-2-1 Brave sheet, and they would leave 3-2-1 Brave in the locker room
Oh,
where, and I would still be at the JV game,
yeah.
and I would check in with my captains. How did it go? Is everyone taking it serious? Do I need to step in? And overall, they said, no, we're all bought in. We all did it. We all visualized. And the captain would talk them through the visualizing their 3 affirmations.
Oh yeah, that was my next question. Like, did the captain do the script, or did you play it? Did they have like a speaker to play it for them, or how did they?
Well, for the 3-2-1 Brave, they just visualized their selves doing their 3 affirmations. So
Mhm.
they didn't talk them through it was just like, they would set a clock and do 1 minute, visualize yourself doing the first affirmation, and then the next minute, the second affirmation. Um, or, how you see yourself playing, or the player you want to be.
Mhm.
And then we did do we do visualizations before each big game or playoff game, where we're visualizing the whole game, things going wrong, things going our way, how are we
Mhm.
responding. And so I've done that for years, and I
Yeah.
know the power of visualization, but I have never brought it down to an individual level where they're visualizing themselves doing it. And so that was another layer that I think is so powerful,
Mhm.
where I've just done it as a group setting. We're visualizing the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is great. So, all right, let's hear the details of how you think it went. Like, what was the impact? What did you start to notice with your team, with individual players? What was the shift and the difference that you saw?
Well, I was very nervous about going into my that year where we just struggle. It was just when you just have challenges to manage on a team, and it might just be one and it can taint your whole season. And so I had
Mhm.
a few, and sweet kids, just hard to manage at times because I think they had a hard
Mhm.
time regulating themselves. And I didn't see any of the problems that I was anticipating going into that next season because they had the tools to manage their own emotions. And, one of the ones that was my perfectionist who
Mhm.
struggled the most, I think she benefited the most. And she was the one who wouldn't watch the video. That's what's really funny.
Oh my
But
gosh. Yeah.
doing the 3-2-1 Brave, she learned how to journal and just let go of all the stuff going on.
Mhm.
I just think I have high achievers, and they need a moment when you part of your 3-2-1 Brave is to just journal for 2 minutes. And
Mhm.
that, I think that was very powerful for her to let go of everything. And I got a fresh player at practice. And so
Yeah.
that moment to just pause and shelf everything before they jump in to volleyball, I saw was a huge improvement. And so that season, everything that I was worried about, it was a non-issue. And I don't even think I realized it until towards the end of season, how, gosh, all my fears I didn't have to deal with. And then it took a moment for me to realize, you know what? I think it's because we've done something so different this year than we did last year. So the payout was huge. And that season, we got third in district, and we ended up going to playoffs. And we ended up being in the top 8 of Texas. And so again, we're third in district, top 4 go to playoffs. And so to be in the top 8 of Texas and be third in our pool of 10 in our district was pretty impressive for us. You know,
Yeah.
this 13 pool, every game just felt like icing on the cake.
Mhm.
But it really was our ability to be able to be poised and be resilient and manage mistakes and, you know, having a snapback routine and them staying in a positive headspace. So that was that year where I just came off season with, you know, 3 girls that were challenging. They figured out how to, and they're my best players. They figured
Mhm.
out how to manage themselves and be confident. And because of that, they were the impetus that led us to that, you know, regional final game. And although we didn't win, we knew we had far achieved more than we ever thought we could. And it was,
Mhm.
I feel like the difference maker was our mental game.
Yeah. Wow, that gave me goosebumps.
Oh,
That was so awesome. Yeah, because it is tough, and, a lot of coaches who would be in your situation are like, "I don't know how it's gonna go next year," and then you just kinda cross your fingers, and then, like, the typical cycle, because I'm sure you've been in it, because I've been in it a lot too, is, like, you can anticipate some things that are potentially gonna happen during season or some challenges that you foresee, and you're just like, "Well, we'll just see how it goes," and then the season starts, and there's all this, like, hype around the season, and, there's the honeymoon phase, and things are you're like, "Oh, I guess it'll just all be okay," but then eventually, the personalities happen, the things that are holding them back mentally come out, and then you're in this situation where you're not playing how you want to play. There's like some stuff impacting the team chemistry, and then you end the season and people are just trying to manage through and get through the last little bit of it. And then you start over, and it's just like you just crossing your fingers and hoping something's going to be different. So the fact that you were like not only recognizing and like looking ahead, but now you did something about it. You're like, this is this is what we're going to do differently. That's huge.
well, I
Um,
was really nervous about it. I remember talking to our district athletic director. She came to a game and she said, "So how's off season going?" And I had a moment of vulnerability, and I said, I'm doing something very different. I'm giving up a day in my off season, and we're focusing on mental performance training. And this is very hard for me because I want to use every single minute. I'm very task oriented, and to have the girls not dress out and use
mhm,
a day that, like, Wednesdays are an important day for us because girls aren't traveling on Mondays and Fridays to go to club. It's where I have all my volleyball players. So that is like
yeah.
a great volleyball day for us in a gym. And I said, I'm giving up my favorite day where I know everyone's going to be there. We're not dressing out. We're going to my classroom and we're doing mental training. And I am just praying that this pays off come season. And I just need you to know that I'm doing all I can to be successful with this program. So just
Mhm.
know if this is a big fail, it wasn't because my intentions weren't right, you know, like,
Right.
and she, you know, I felt like I needed to let her know, like, we're not dressing out, but this is why. And the payout was there. Obviously, it was a season I just explained to you. But as a coach, it is hard to give up time. I'm sure
Mhm.
having the kids sit down in front of a TV, you know, you're like kind of like shaking a little, like, okay. But the payout, it is just such valuable information. And
Mhm.
it's going to make the time that you're on the court like that much more quality.
Yeah, yeah, I totally hear you. But honestly, like when I talk to my girls, like they look forward to we did ours on Fridays, but it was in season, so they were all mandated to be there. But they looked forward to it. It was kind of a combination of like, oh my gosh, that was like a rough, by the time you get to Friday in season, it's like you've gone through a lot and it's a grind. And so they look forward to having a little bit of a breakup in the schedule and doing something a little different, focusing on their mind, and kind of going into the weekend like, okay, can refresh and then come back on Saturday and like hit it hard again. um so yeah, but let's talk about that as far as like the time, the sacrifice, because you are, and I always say you get out more than you put in when it comes to mental training. Like, you don't need to spend as much time as you do physical training. It's not like a one for one thing. So coaches who think that, like, you can get that out of your head. But like even a little bit, even the 3-2-1 brave that takes like 5 to 7 minutes, like that actually gives you back time, because now you're not wasting time on the bench coaching the emotional side of the game to your athletes, like trying to get their heads back in the game. Um, but I know that in the season you had a little bit more time. But can you talk to us about like just navigating, like, how did it actually look? Like, you got everyone together, you played the videos, can you just like paint the picture for coaches who are like, how would this actually look if I were a coach trying to do a program like this with my team?
We we went in an area where I have a projector and I have a TV, and so when they all came in and they sat in groups, the classroom set up with groups, and they had their journals out. And then I turned on the TV and I said, okay, today we're going to learn a pregame routine. And so the video is about 20 minutes. And then if you pause it and give them time to talk, you can you could stretch it out and you could add, you provided questions too to ask. And so there was times where I felt like, oh, I think this question will be great for this group. I
Mhm.
have a first period with my younger ones and then another period with another class period with the older ones. So for some of them, it might have looked different in different classes, but the video was still the same. And
Yeah.
then after the video, I love how the video is a perfect amount of time. They're all about 20 minutes. And
Mhm.
so that was a perfect amount of time because we had time to talk and then it caught their attention quick. I think
Mhm.
anything more than that would have been I actually am doing it in off season right now. And
Okay.
I really wanted to get through all of it before the end of the year. And I realized I didn't budget my time well because we had some testing and days we couldn't do it anyway. So I showed two and I
Mhm.
saw that I was losing them at the impact is it's short, it's to the point, it's a nugget. We can talk about it. Let's just hammer in on this and move on. And I
Mhm.
did too. And I won't do that again because I just think the way you already have it chopped up is perfect as
Mhm.
far as timing goes. And you want to leave time for the visualizations that you have. I don't want to leave off the visualizations either.
Mhm.
So I don't
Yeah.
know if that answered your question. Yeah, it's so
Oh,
easy. All I did was have to sit them down and press play on the screen and they watched it. I didn't have to do much prep.
yeah. Yeah, that's great. We give you a training plan, give you a guide. You can literally just follow that. Even if you have shorter amount of time, like you can kind of play around with it. If you're like, okay, we only have like 15 minutes today. There are some lessons that are shorter. But I love like I try and do 20 minutes too. That's like seems like a good chunk where it's long enough to be impactful, but it's not too long to where you're losing them. So yeah. Okay. Question about, I mean, you've touched on this a little bit, but did this impact you all at all just as a coach yourself personally? Like, yeah, you're doing this for your team to give your team skills, but can you talk about the impact that it had on you as a coach and just being the leader of your team?
Well, it made my life so much easier because
Yeah.
I I want to be all I can for them. I mean, I say like my mission statement as a coach to help to be the best you possibly can be as a student
Mhm.
athlete. And I knew that I was falling short in that area of helping them, giving them tools to be confident and tools to overcome their setbacks. I can say be resilient, but this for example, the snapback routine. Like I wouldn't have thought to tell them to like touch something or have a word, and
Yeah.
so it made me I guess it empowered me to know that I am doing absolutely everything I can to fulfill, the purpose that I feel I am in your life. And I want you to be the best version of yourself. And then I want what I teach you to supersede the court. And so I feel like I don't know how I'm saying, I guess it makes me feel good knowing that I'm giving
Mhm.
you something extra, you know, I'm giving you my all. Teaching you how to be confident in addition to the
Mhm.
skill and everything else. And so it makes me proud to know that I'm doing all I can. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what I mean, that's honestly, if you ask any coach, like, why are you coaching? Like, yeah, we love the sport for sure, but obviously this goes well beyond. And this is just one of those tools that allows you to fulfill what your mission is as a coach, which is awesome. So I love that. My last question for you is back to kind of a logistical one because it popped into my head thinking about coaches who are listening. You're in like year 3 now using this program. Yeah. So do you change it like what you show them from year to year, or do you just do the same thing over and over? Like I obviously know from my standpoint of like how I have designed the program to be done from year to year, but I'm curious how you're actually doing it.
no, I do the same thing every year. I don't, if there's times I've had to let something out, I might cherry pick, but I like even me pushing two in one day was because I feel like everything was so valuable and
Mhm.
important. And I think it's important for them to hear from year to year. They it's a good refresher. We say the same things, shoulders down, we're telling them the same thing 20 times in, 1 week. I think that they can hear mental training, twice in 1 year, or once in 1 year. So
Yeah. That's what I always tell coaches too. I'm like, do you just tell your players how to pass one time? And
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And then
So I
they got it.
feel
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
And I think a lot of us as coaches, we would have loved to have this training. I think over time I've learned how to snap back and I've learned how
Mhm.
to not do the comparison game and I've learned, we've learned through trial and error and so it's a good refresher when I'm watching the video, like, gosh, if I knew this as a younger coach, I wouldn't have struggled with maybe comparing myself. I wouldn't have struggled with some of those losses and really beat myself up over that. You learn over time, but wouldn't it be great if someone like taught you how to deal with
Mhm.
all that sort of stuff as an adult? And so I I think that what you say, what do I get out as a coach? I'm just like, if only I knew all of this earlier,
Mhm.
and so it's really good for me to hear it all every year too. I don't want to miss when they do it without me. I don't want to every year. I don't want to miss. Oh, I love that one. I want to watch that one. I need to hear that.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think it's all important.
yeah. So great. Well, Amy, thank you for sharing. I just love hearing about how you're using this, about your team. I can't wait to hear how things go this season too. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything that I didn't cover that you think would be useful for a coach listening to hear?
No, I think this is the best piece of equipment that I have ever purchased. It is my best purchase as a coach. We get a budget money to spend on uniforms and we buy boxes and all the balls and everything. But if you are not purchasing this to help equip your kids so that they can be confident players, and none of that training equipment matters. So I just think I've told you before, this is the most valuable piece of equipment that I have purchased for my volleyball program.
Oh, gosh, well, thank you for saying that, Amy.
Yeah, I mean it.